Dodgers have won it all. High fly ball into right field. She is gone. He struck him out. 2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is one back. Welcome up. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by the man who correctly predicted a 5-game divisional victory for the Dodgers, Anthony Witrado. Anthony, I don't know if you've gotten a chance to take a small victory lap here, so I'm going to give you the floor.
I have not yet. This was the minimum possible margin I could win by.
It's true. It's true. You said it would be comfortable, 5 or more. They won by 5. Hey, that counts, though.
I did.
Vegas cashes that bet.
I said I did get accused of changing my prediction earlier on social, but I do not think I did that. I said I think I was asked, "Are you as confident as you used to be in that prediction?" And I said, "Absolutely not. I am not as confident." But nobody predicted that the entire rotation would end up in the ER.
Yeah, it's true.
All around the same time. So no, look, I think if they have 3/5 of the rotation, they probably win this thing by double digits. In all honesty, I think the last 6 weeks or so of them really fishing to find starters almost at every turn, because different guys were healthy at different points. I think they run away with this thing comfortably, but let's try something different. Maybe it'll work in October.
It's true. It's true. I see Matty Man in the chat and others commenting on the fact that the Padres, for those watching it live, are currently leading the Braves. The Mets have taken down the Brewers. The Padres are up 3-0 in the middle of the 6th inning against the Braves. Obviously, the Braves having to play that doubleheader yesterday does not help their cause when it comes to pitching today, especially Chris Sale also out. So not only are they without Sale, but Grant Holmes also unavailable. Smith Shawver was who started this game for the Braves. 1 1/3, 4 hits, 3 runs. I'm going to be honest, Anthony. I wasn't positive that was a real person when the name came up on my screen, but it was AJ Smith Shawver. One appearance in the major leagues this season. It was a start. He went 4 1/3, no runs, 4 strikeouts, 2 walks. Not going so well for him in the wild card round against the Padres tonight.
Not so far. That homer he gave up to Tatis, I thought it looked like a pop-up. He knew he got it, so obviously he knew that he had barreled it. But I'm watching the game now. He's up again. But it looked like a pop-up, and I was watching it with a Padres fan and a Braves fan, 2 of my good friends. I don't know why either of those guys are my good friends, in all honesty. But needless to say, all 3 of us thought it was an out, and then needless to say, one was very happy and one was very unhappy when that happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I imagine, are you rooting for the Braves in this series, Anthony?
I am. From a Dodgers perspective, I am, just because you want to catch a team as worn as they possibly can be, and I think that would be the Braves if they happen to win this series. I'm not a subscriber to the theory that the Padres are like a head and shoulders better team than the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers are a better team, even as currently constructed. But if you're looking for the path of least resistance, then I think that would be Atlanta.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, obviously if they lose tonight, they're going to have to win 2 in a row against the Padres, which would appear unlikely. And so at the very least, what we can all agree on was we want a 3-game series in that set. We went through kind of the implications of that and how it would mess with the rotation. But if you can get to 3 games for those teams, that would be the best case scenario, regardless of who wins. I'm with you. I think the path of least resistance is the Braves. Although, look, as other people have pushed back, and I think is a fair point, if you're going to win the World Series, you're going to have to beat some good teams. And the Padres, I think the Dodgers and Padres are the 2 best teams in baseball right now. That's my estimation. And by the way, that Vegas has the Dodgers as the favorites to win the World Series. Part of that is because they don't have to go through the wild card round, so those numbers are a little bit skewed. But I think if those 2 teams match up in the NLDS, it's going to be a heavyweight fight. And it appears, based on tonight and based on what the odds will say after this, Anthony, that might be where we are headed. The other news today, of course, the Mets sort of sneaking into the postseason, if you will. Again, for the Mets to make the playoffs, I mean, any of these teams to make the playoffs, the Diamondbacks had to lose 5 of their last 7 games, including a game in which they were up 8-0. If any of those 5 losses go the other way, the Diamondbacks are in the postseason. The Mets get in, and they beat the Brewers pretty comfortably today with 8 runs themselves. On the other side, probably the most interesting from a Dodgers perspective point of view, I would say, is the Tigers versus the Astros, simply because the bases loaded. We're in the 9th inning, and Jason Hayward.
I was
Had that been a triple or a double
Oh
or
my
a grand
gosh.
slam, we might have been leading this show with Jason Hayward content. He lined out to right, so we're not having that conversation.
Yeah, so many people would have been fired for DFAing Jason Hayward if that hit had come through. I when they showed him on deck, that was the first thing that popped into my mind, because I knew we had the show tonight, and I said, "Oh boy, if this comes down to him and he succeeds, we are going to hear it."
Yeah.
He hit the ball hard. But right at somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is kind of the Jason Hayward experience. It's the exit velocities are always good. It's just a matter of, can it actually get down? So that's kind of the around baseball conversation. We'll get to some more of that if the Padres, depending on what happens in that game. We're going to talk some NLDS scheduling stuff. I want to talk about a conversation that was happening on social media. I put out a tweet this morning that was mostly in jest, and there was some truth to it, right? Every joke, there's some truth behind it. And it was centered around Dave Roberts and kind of the question of, is Dave Roberts managing for his job? And the tweet could have been better worded by me, but it basically, the essence of it was, Anthony, and I want to get your thoughts on this. The essence of the tweet was, if this Dodgers team is good enough to win the World Series, and you believe that, then I think it's fair to say, hey, if something goes sideways, there's a really good chance that Dave Roberts is going to get blamed for it. But if you think this Dodgers team is crappy and banged up and not well put together and way worse than the Padres, etc., then I don't think retrospectively it would be fair to then a week, 2 weeks from now to be able to say, hey, Dave Roberts should be fired because he failed. So it's almost like, I joked, we got to pick which side we're on. Like, if you're like me, if you're like Blake, some of the folks who think the Dodgers are very, very good, Blake's picking the Dodgers to win the World Series. Okay. So whatever negativity, just remember, our guy Blake's got the Dodgers to win the World Series. I love it. I'm proud of him for it. He's more confident, I think, than me, which I never thought I would say. But my point is, like, if you think they're good enough to win the World Series and you plant your flag there, and the Dodgers were to lose in the NLDS, I think you have every right a week from now to be pissed off at Dave Roberts and to be calling for his head. But if you think this team stinks and you can't believe they won the division and you can't believe they made the playoffs, then we can't retroactively come back and say, hey, it's Dave Roberts' fault. So that's kind of the premise of this. I don't think it was fully understood by everybody, which is fine. That's on me. But I'm curious kind of what your thoughts are on sort of the need that I'm suggesting that we got to pick one side or the other.
I thought how it was worded, that there was a little tongue-in-cheek,
Totally.
/S sarcasm in there a little bit. But if we're asking the real question here, then I think there's obviously a little more nuance to it.
Yeah.
I think the Dodgers are good enough to win.
Yeah.
I will say that. I guess now that this reminds me, I haven't really done a prediction, but I do think the Dodgers, as currently constructed and health-wise, are, if they're not the best team in the playoffs, I think they're like a 1A kind of best team in the playoffs. Now, with that said, I do think that they have enough going against them that you can see where the pitfalls might lie.
Totally.
And it's mostly in their pitching. I think it's all in their pitching.
Yeah.
And in the rotation in particular. And so I think with that caveat, if they do lose, now, if they lose in the NLDS, I think it's a different conversation. If they lose in the NLDS, I think Dave Roberts is probably safe. And I think the reason why is because they're going to look at it as, not that they're going to look at it.
So you're saying if the Dodgers were to lose in the first round, you think there are enough excuses on this team that the management would give him a pass?
No, I think if he loses in the NLDS, I think then that's a real conversation about.
Got it. Okay. I think that's what I thought you were saying, but I'm not sure that's what you actually said. So you think if they lose in the NLDS, then Dave Roberts' job is in serious jeopardy.
Yeah, I don't know I don't know if it's two seriouses, but I think they're having serious conversations around the front office table in Andrew Friedman's office about what to do next. I think that if they lose in the NLCS, then he gets the pass of he wasn't playing with the full deck that had he had it and lost, then, the conversation might be different. So I do think that the injuries will play a part if he advances past the first round of this. If he loses in the first round, I think kind of regardless of how it happens, I think then that's a real conversation that needs to be had. And I think probably will be had, especially with the guy like Skip Schumacher, on the table as he's just been fired by the Marlins. I'm not saying that to say that he's the right guy, but I think there are options out there.
Yeah, I think it's fair. Yeah, I mean, the Skip Schumacher stuff is crazy. That's a whole nother conversation. It's wild to me that the Marlins looked at a guy. And again, I want to be clear, something I said in the Andy McCullough interview. I'm not saying Skip Schumacher should be judged by his record. I want to make that clear. It's hilarious to me that the Marlins would look at a guy and say no thanks, and Dodgers fans are clamoring for him. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong. Disagreeing with the Marlins assessment, if you just bet against what the Marlins thought was the right decision, you'd be a very rich person. So that's worth pointing out. But I agree with you. And when I say it was slightly tongue in cheek, obviously there's a middle ground where the Dodgers are terrible and Dave Roberts screws some stuff up that is so egregious that you're like, okay, yeah, sure. Landon Knack over Tyler Glasnow is a bummer for Dave, but also why is Joe Kelly trying to get a 7th out to close this game in game 1 when you've got 2 guys available? There's crazy stuff that could happen.
And we can't put that past him. It could happen. Right.
Totally. And so that's why I think it's fair. Where I stand is the Dodgers are good enough to win the World Series. And if the reason they lose is because we look back and say, gosh, dang it, why did Dave do that? And why did Dave do that? And I've been a defender of Dave, but I'm also very open to the idea that multiple times I've come on this show, less so in the last 12 months, more so in the 2021, 2022, 2023 range, and said, what are we doing, Dave? Why are we subbing this guy in? Why are we pinch hitting for this person here? If we're having that conversation yet again in the context of a disappointing playoff exit, then I think Dave Roberts really is managing for his job. And so what I want to ask you, and I want to phrase it this way, because I think there is the fan perspective of, I want Dave Roberts gone. And you kind of alluded to this, but then there is the reality. And I think in the job that you and I have, we're kind of always trying to balance telling people both what we would do and also what we think would happen in this situation. So I'm going to ask you to put what do you think would happen? Not what would Anthony do, but what do you think would happen if the Dodgers were to play the Padres in the NLDS, lose in 5 games, and there's a couple really questionable decisions in the midst of it? Do you really think there's a chance? Do you really think there's a chance that Dave Roberts would be gone?
That second part got me. Okay. If you would have left it at they lost to the Padres in 5, I would have said, there's going to be a debate. If they lose to the Padres in 5 and he has legitimately a couple of or 3 questionable decisions, I think he's gone. And I think they would probably be correct in that assessment. Not that I think he's a terrible manager or necessarily we've said this before. He's not an X's and O's guy. That's not what he's there for. Sorry, I think my daughter's screaming in the other room, so close the door here. But and I've written the column more than one time that Dave should have gone. And I haven't written it recently in the last couple of years because I don't think he's done anything as egregious to have that happen. But it may be written again if that's the case. Absolutely. And I think that I think we don't judge him correctly because I think he came out of the gate as a guy who was sort of on fire in terms of he made some bad decisions very early on. You remember that national series even in I think it was 19. I think that was one of the columns I wrote. I think after that I was like, okay,
that was the Soto, Clayton Kershaw situation, right?
I absolutely wrote that column after that, and I said, this is enough. But the guy's also lost 2 World Series to teams that have been proven to cheat in those series. And, not saying that lets him off the hook completely, but like, you take a cheating team to 7 games, you've managed a decent enough series, right? Like, so he's had his ups, he's had his downs, but I think if they lose in the NLDS and there's one game where you can be like, you know what, he cost you that game, I don't think there's much of a question about it. I think he has to go.
Yeah.
And again, I don't mean that to say like they couldn't win it with him, but like I think it's just thin time.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think it's just an interesting conversation to have because I like to say, what are the expectations? And sort of like the only way to not react in the moment is to think about how things might play out and what the scenarios would be. And it's really interesting. I think it's interesting to read the comments, both on Twitter when I was interacting with people earlier today, but even in here. And we've got people on all sides. Like when people think there's no chance that Dave Roberts is going to get fired, and we've got other people right next to them that are saying like he should pretty much be fired for anything short of a World Series, kind of regardless, And I've got people saying these are extreme views. What are you talking about? And then right after them, it's like 2 people picking a side and saying, "Oh yeah, no, they like." And so it's just the nature of it. And I think it's fascinating because of who Dave Roberts is, because of the success he's had. I saw Jason say, "Hey, he's a great regular season manager, not a postseason manager." I see people saying, hey, he's got to manage with some urgency. And so we'll see. I mean, we'll see how all of this plays out. The postseason is such a small sample size. It's such like a sort of,
your mistakes are magnified because of that.
Magnified.
Right?
It's magnified.
Over the course of 162, you can make some mistakes here or there, but like, fine. Like the talent of your team, as long as you don't decide like, hey, I'm going to sit Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts for 2 weeks each. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're going to be okay. The X's and O's are amplified in the postseason, and therefore your X's and O's mistakes are amplified and they cost you series. And Doc has not had a great track record when it comes to that part of it.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And at times the team is going to be good enough to overcome. At times you're going to press the wrong button and it's going to work out great. And you're going to be like, thank goodness we accidentally pressed that button because the guy got out of the jam or whatever. Right. Or the other manager, like I always joked in that Braves series, like the NLCS in 2020, when they go on to win it, like I was watching the Braves manager thinking, oh my gosh, this guy, like he was a mess. He was a mess in that series with some of the decisions he made. And yet the Dodgers end up winning that series. And so sometimes you benefit from the guy on the other side being just as big of a mess, if not a bigger mess.
And you probably don't always get credit for the things that do work out. Like in the other national series, I forget what year it was, but when he took Kenley out and he brought Kershaw in to close out the game and it worked.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, great for Kershaw. But had Dave done that and Kershaw failed there in that situation, what would the cries have been? Aside from the Kershaw narrative, they would have been like, this guy's terrible.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We got a super chat here from 300 saying the Padres starting pitching is going to be tough. Michael King, 7 innings, 5 hits, no runs, 12 strikeouts, currently going for the Padres. What's that?
He's been fantastic his second half of the season.
Yeah. I mean, look, I remember seeing him early and watching the way that his pitches move right and left. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And again, he was the main piece that came over in the Juan Soto trade. And nobody is making an argument that Michael King is a better player than Juan Soto. Just that relative to some of these Padres trades that have made, they rarely get a guy as good as Michael King is. And, to your point, you look at the season that he put together and sort of the way that he came on as the season went on. He finishes with an ERA under 3, over 200 strikeouts in 30 starts. If you have that guy under team control for a few more years here, that's a good get. And, again, to this point, Cease, King, Musgrove, that is clearly the place that the Padres have an advantage over the Dodgers.
Absolutely. Yeah. Their lineup isn't nearly as deep. I don't think their bullpen is as good, but we've seen so many times in the postseason that starting pitching is what really, really matters. And they have that as a clear advantage if they were to be the team that comes out of the wild card series.
And the ironic thing is, it was actually the Braves who had the number 1 ERA in the National League this year from a starting pitching perspective. However, your Cy Young guy, Chris Sale, gets hurt right before the doubleheader, the must-win doubleheader, and then throws everything into chaos. And I mean, again, as a Dodgers fan, it's hard for me to feel bad for just about anybody given the injury history and injury luck that we have had. But I mean, to be a Braves fan and to make the playoffs, but to have Sale go out and then to throw everything into chaos right before this 3-game series, let's just say I can empathize with the Braves fan feeling the things that they're feeling, because to have the number 1 starting pitching ERA and then to start AJ Smith Shawver, apologies to AJ, to be starting that guy in game 1 of a a 3-game playoff set with the number 1 ERA is rough. It's rough stuff.
For sure. And Sale's done this before. And we can talk about the Dodgers signing Glass now and all that stuff, but the Braves went out and got Sale. And this is not the first time he's been like one of the best pitchers in the league and then can't pitch in the playoffs right down to the end.
Yeah. I see Iris in the chat. She said, Jeff, I didn't like Andy calling a Padres-Astros World Series. Andy McCullough was on this morning, national guy for The Athletic, former Dodgers beat reporter, author of the Clayton Kershaw book. Great interview, great stuff, kind of breaking down the National League, getting insight, I thought, into some Clayton Kershaw injury stuff. But at the end, I asked if he had to make a prediction yet, and he was like, no, not really. He's like, I guess I'd take the Padres over the Astros. I was like, geez, Louise, this is a Dodgers show, right? You're going to come on a Dodgers show and say Padres over Astros. I get it. Like, if you just remove all your feelings from it, it makes sense how you would get to that. The American League's a mess, and sure, you just take your chances with Houston, who seems to always get there. And again, I think you could make a case that the Padres are either 1A or 1B when it comes to the National League, but good Lord, that one hurt for me to hear.
Yeah, for sure. Andy knows his audience. He was trolling. But look, I mean, I think the Dodgers and the Padres, as of right now, are the 2 best teams probably in baseball. And the reward for being the best team in baseball record-wise is that you get what is essentially the 2nd best team in baseball now in your very first series.
Maybe
we can discuss that whole, how that plays out at a later time. But
and to be fair, he predicted the Astros. The Astros are down, now need to win 2 straight games against the Detroit Tigers, which is going to be easier than facing Skubal like they had to today, but they've got to take 2 straight to get themselves out of that hole. So something to keep an eye on there as well. The other bit of news, and then we'll get to some questions. We're going to have tons of time for questions tonight, is that the NLDS schedule has been announced from a TV perspective. Game 1 is at 5:38 p.m. West Coast on Saturday. Game 2 at 5:08 p.m. on Sunday. No real major news here. We kind of assumed, Anthony, that this was going to be the later game in all of these slates. And that's exactly what it is. It's the latest game on both of these days, of course, being played on the West Coast. So no surprises there. But we do have time, so you can pencil that into your calendars, or I guess type them into your calendars.
I'll be at game 2.
You're going to be at game 2.
I'll be at game 2.
There you go. Okay, who are you going to see pitch?
Sounds like Yamamoto. It's
right.
I think it's who we predicted the last time too, in terms of how that would line up. So I'm good with that. I'm a big Yamamoto fan, so I'm hoping that he throws a gem.
Yeah, it sounds like Flaherty's going to be pitching in game 1, and it's look, there's galaxy brain stuff going on with who's going to pitch when, because Yamamoto, if he needs 5 days off, and somebody in the chat, I'm blanking on what their YouTube name is, sent me a direct message on Twitter that I appreciated. That was basically this whole breakdown of when Yamamoto should pitch, whether or not he should be the game 1 starter, the game 2 starter. I believe the argument that he was making is that Yamamoto should be the game 3 starter, just because of the way that all of the dates work out. You kind of wouldn't have to skip him at any point. I think that the flip side to that is that then he's your game 3 starter, and you possibly get into a 5-game series where your best pitcher isn't actually pitching until game 3. I think that would be the concern there. But it was a compelling argument. It was TQT. So TQT, who's often in here, he was the one who sent me the direct message on that. And basically, again, just making the case that if you scout it out with Buehler as the number 2 starter and Yamamoto as the number 3 starter, then all of his days would line up through the NLDS and through the NLCS. Whereas if he's on the day 2 starter, once you get to the NLCS and game 5, for him to pitch in game 5, he would be pitching on just 4 days rest, which kind of the Dodgers have said isn't going to happen. So all that to say,
you don't manage and you don't line up for the next series.
Yeah.
You manage and you line up to win the series that you're in.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, I think especially against a team like the Padres. Now,
Yeah.
I think that the flip side to that is, yes, you manage for the series you're in, but if you know none of these guys are going to pitch twice in the series, right? Because Flaherty would be your 1 in 5. So
Right.
if that's the case, would you think about something like a schedule with Yamamoto, given that the only real difference for the present tense is game 2 versus game 3?
No. Because if you lose game 1, you need your next best guy on the bump to stop this. And if you win game 1, you want your next best guy on the mound to try to like just about slam the door on the other team.
Yeah.
So,
And I mean, again, I think I'm with you. I'm just thinking through my head, like game 3 is happening no matter what. And so
Sure.
game 2 and game 3 are both guaranteed. So messing with game 2 and game 3, I think I could see the point where if there is a real payoff in the second series and it doesn't really feel like there's a huge downside in the first series.
if they lost game 1, 3-2 or something like that, and then they threw Bueller in game 2, because I'm assuming that's who would be the guy then,
Yeah, 7 shutout from Bueller in game 2.
and he gets shelled in game 2 and they're down
Never gonna
0-2,
happen.
and
Never
now
gonna
you get
happen.
Yamamoto in game 3 and Yamamoto goes 6 shutout or 6-1 or something like that. Ooh,
Yeah.
you're not just firing Dave in that situation.
Yeah. Look, I get it. I appreciated the message because
I
think
understand.
is
It makes
interesting.
sense. It makes sense.
And
Yeah.
and if we were talking about like, oh, don't pitch him game 3, pitch him game 4, then I'm like, well, game 4 is not guaranteed, so let's not mess with that. Game 2 and game 3, I mean, you've seen teams do that before, where it's like, well, we like this guy better at home versus this guy better on the road. But again, if you're making that case, I think we would all probably take our chances with Bueller on the road versus Yamamoto on the road, right?
Yeah, and I just don't understand the benefit that it gives you in the series that you're playing, not the hypothetical one that you might be playing later.
Yeah. Yeah. It's no benefit. It would be no benefit in the NLDS. There would be a benefit in the NLCS. So look, Dave has seemingly made it clear that it's going to be Flaherty in game 1. I think the general assumption is that it will be Yamamoto in game 2, Bueller in game 3. And then do you think the consensus seems to be that it's going to be bullpen / Knack in game 4, meaning probably an opener, Landon Knack, maybe 3 innings, and then kind of the bullpen from there? Or do you think they hand them the ball to Landon Knack in the top of the first inning and say, or I guess it'd be the bottom of the first inning and say, go get it?
I tend to lean that I think they would go a bullpen arm first,
Yeah.
then give him the ball. That's sort of what I would think would happen.
Yeah.
Which I'm fine with. I don't whatever. I don't think at that point it matters if the bullpen's just covering the first inning. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I'm with you. I understand
Very
why,
indifferent.
those, you don't want the best hitters to face a guy like Landon Knack more times than they need to.
Sure.
And
Sure.
then it gives you more flexibility as the game goes on, because if the lineup does turn over a third time, but Landon Knack's pitching well, you can have him face the top of the order first. It would only be a second time. And there's now what'll be interesting is the guy that the Dodgers have typically gone to as an opener, it feels like, is Brusdar Graterol, who's not available. So who on the staff would be the opener would be an interesting thing to think about.
Well, it feels like they've gone to Brazier a bunch
True.
lately, right?
That's true. Yeah. And I guess depending on the team, maybe they go with a lefty to start off if it's a team that, exactly who you're going to be facing, basically.
Right.
So if it's a couple guys that struggle against lefties, maybe it's Bonda and that kind of a thing. Yeah. So we'll see. All right, let's get to some questions, folks. If you've got questions, all caps questions, throw them in the chat here on a Tuesday night. I see some people pointing out the Braves have now struck out 14 times in 7 2/3, but they do have a runner on first in the 8th inning. But 14 strikeouts. King is out. Adam is in, and he has struck out 2 of the 3 batters he's faced. And so that's where we're at with that. Again, the Astros lost. Good news there. 1-0. The Royals beat the Orioles. Bizarre one there.
Yeah. The Orioles are they have not been good.
Yeah.
They have not been good. I want to say like maybe since the All-Star break, they've been like a pretty mediocre team.
Yeah.
They've benefited from their hot start, and I think the American League sort of being in a little bit like it's just kind of messy.
A little bit. Yeah. A lot of bit messy.
Yeah. But they did not look good for a long time now. So losing a game 1-0 is tough no matter what. But I thinking that they were the team to beat, I think was probably a little bit of fool's gold.
Yeah. And look, if you're watching this Padres game and seeing how pathetic the Braves have looked offensively, that's basically what you're hoping you'll see from the Padres after they have to play this wild card series and then come to LA. Is a little bit of that hangover, a little bit of that exhaustion would be the goal. Matty Man wants to know, with all your pull, Anthony, can you talk Tommy Edman into hitting exclusively from the right side? He's hitting 190 from the left. Look, the switch hitters are basically extinct for this reason. Most of them, it has come to light, are just way better from one side than they are from other. And it's like, yes, technically you are capable of doing both, but it might not be a good thing. So is it time for Tommy Edman to make this switch?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. If everybody's available, I think it's probably that time. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And then, you get the benefit of like Tommy Edman coming off the bench as not only a defensive replacement, but as an offensive replacement from the other side of the plate. So, I'm fine with that. I would like to see it start now. I would imagine though, if not, then that reality hits everybody probably next season. If he doesn't do something brilliant from the other side this postseason.
Isn't it interesting? I mean, of all the things, like I feel like 20 years from now, there's just going to be no guys that are switch hitters, which was just a thing that was taken for granted and assumed. And, especially with the righty, lefty stuff, we were like, oh man, this guy's a switch hitter. And again, as more and more, numbers have come out, I don't know what the right word is. Numbers have come out to prove like, hey, actually cool. You can hit left-handed every once in a while against righties, but like you're actually might be better right-handed against righties. I mean, and I guess that is the number we don't have, right?
Yeah.
Because we've only seen him hit lefty against righties. But
I was just going to say, I would like them to tell him, it's like they won't do it now, but I would like them to tell him next season, we're going to play you every day, but we want you to hit right-handed against right-handed pitching, and let's see where this goes. Because what's the point if you're hitting 190?
Yeah, exactly. Jonathan wants to know, is there anywhere to find out who will be doing the play-by-play for the NLDS or where Joe Davis will be? Not that I know of. I guess you could look at what channel some of these games will be on. Let's see if I can find any of that information. So Dodgers will be on Fox Sports 1 for game 1 and game 2. So I imagine, the Phillies Brewers is going to be on Fox. So I imagine Joe Davis is getting the Fox game, and then somebody else is getting FS1 would be my guess. But I don't know. I guess, that would be my guess. That's just an educated guess. Somebody in the chat has better info. Fill it in. Anything you'd add there?
No, I don't recall who, because I typically just watch the local feed if I can. So I don't know who gets those games nationally on FS1. It's going to be somebody bad, probably. At least
somebody we're not. Hopefully not. I guess the one good news, the good part about not getting Joe Davis is it means you don't have to listen to John Smoltz either. So it's like it's sort of it's a wash, if you ask me. Noisy Ninja, do you think there will be a different attitude this postseason compared to last year?
Good question. I like that question.
What do you think?
I think there will be.
Okay.
I think this team is playing with a little more urgency. I think they understand. I think they've had some guys, Mookie, Freddie. They've had some guys who have been around now enough to know, like, all right, we cannot let this thing happen again. At least we can't go out like that, right? And so I think they're playing with a little bit of a different sense of urgency. Obviously, Shohei, this is his first October, so he's going to play with something different. And
how do you gauge? Like, this is a question. How do you gauge urgency? Like when you say, "Hey, we're going to play with more urgency," what am I going to see?
Right. Because no one goes up. Even in like that Mets Braves game yesterday, like the Mets guys didn't step into the box, or the guy didn't take the ball and step onto the rubber, trying to not succeed.
Right.
And like we spend a lot of our breath trying to get people to understand that part of this. But like I think with the urgency is like meaning, because sometimes you can see like in the regular season, guys are like, there's another game tomorrow kind of attitude sometimes. And I don't think that necessarily the Dodgers had that last year in the postseason. They were just bad.
Yeah.
I think it comes with like how you react to things. Just it's an attitude thing. Like I don't think it's an effort thing. I think there's a difference there. The Dodgers are typically a pretty laid back team, and it's fair. Like you can't keep that same intensity. Like people were like, I remember people a week ago or whatever saying like the Padres played with more intensity and more fire and blah blah blah. I think it was the Tuesday they lost game 1 in that series, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, man, but like the second things go bad, like you don't have that anymore. And the
Right.
Dodgers have been really good. I think part of the reason they've been so successful regular season wise is because they tend to they keep that sort of even keel.
Yeah.
In the postseason, a guy draws a walk, let's get up on the top rail. Like it's that kind of thing, I think. And it's something that not only did they not have last year, but I really don't think they ever got off the mat to
Yeah.
really be
Yeah.
able to do that last year.
Yeah, last year, I mean, look, the anomaly of all anomalies in many ways, and you could make I'm the attitude thing. Like, I'm not saying you're totally wrong. I'm just saying it's probably hard to evaluate or prove one way or the other when you give up a million runs and the top of the first inning, that
Yeah.
kind of a thing. So we'll see. I've joked like you're always going to be happier and more energetic when you're winning and when you're hitting home runs, and so sometimes it's playing the results of when you lose. Well, there's no emotion. It's like, but yeah, because you're probably pissed off and bummed. But
Yeah.
I do think, like, I've seen people saying, hey, it's the approach, it's the number, the intensity of at bats, it's some of the maybe the urgency that you see in the dugout. And again, it's balancing, not overthinking the situation and not over hyping yourself up to the point where you wear yourself out or where you get too aggressive. But I think I suppose it's you know it when you see it kind of a thing. And
Kind of is. It kind of is. I think the other way, and the Padres they hit a home run, so this game's over.
Yeah.
But I think that one thing that you can see, like one thing that maybe is tangible, is like how disciplined are they, and how focus and discipline focus sort of goes hand in hand. But like,
Yeah.
what do those at bats look like for the hitters?
Yeah.
Are they out
Well,
there?
and that's why, like,
Are they
yeah.
chasing everything,
Yeah.
or are they staying within what they do when they're good? And I think if they come out and they have that sort of approach at the plate, I think we're in for good things.
Well, and this is why the reason I would answer the question yes is because of what I saw in the Padres series. And I know they got crushed for that game that they lost. And, to me, that felt like playing the result more than what was actually in front of us. Because what I
Agreed.
saw was a
Yeah.
team that struggled, yes, but a team that fought its way back and had the bases loaded and Shohei Ohtani on deck with nobody out and just happened to hit into a triple play. So, like, I think they had first and second, but I think they had a situation where, like, they were showing me the intensity. They were on the verge of short of a unbelievable triple play, like putting themselves in an incredible situation. And then what do? They come back in game 2 and they smoke them, and they come back in game 3 and they smoke them. So to me, that was a playoff series. Like, tell me whatever you want. I know it wasn't technically, the intensity was 90% or more there. So to see them get up for that moment, to see them respond well to being down and then to losing and then come back and whoop them 2 games in a row, that to me told me everything that I kind of needed to see about where this team's head was at and
Yeah.
where their mentality was at. So,
And I think 2 things too also play into this. I think one, I think in that clubhouse, they might feel like they're underdogs, like people are doubting them
yeah,
because of the injuries and the pitching stuff and all of that. And then the second thing is Ohtani, I believe, has given them a different sort of like that urgency that you're talking about, which is
Yeah.
not always quantifiable, but like our time is now. This is as good a time as we're ever going to have to go out and win this thing.
Yeah.
That kind of attitude. So that coupled with like maybe they feel like people are doubting us because of the pieces that we're missing, yada yada, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I hope they come out with that kind of mentality, because it would be different than they've gone into postseasons in recent memory, like maybe for a long time, maybe except the year when the Giants won the division.
Yeah.
because it feels like every other year they've sort of coasted in with 105 wins, and everyone thinks that they're the best team in baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. William with the question. Who is your X factor? We'll just stick with the NLDS. We're not looking too far ahead here, but give me an X factor for the NLDS. I'm going to define X factor for us. It can't be a guy that you expect to be the guy. So
okay, who are the guys that are out then? Ohtani,
Mookie, Betts, and Freeman are out.
Okay.
I would say pretty much anybody else is on in play. Like,
okay.
I think anybody else, if you told me anybody else was a major difference maker, I would to some degree be surprised.
Sure.
So take Mookie, take Ohtani, take Freddie off of the table. Who's the X factor in the NLDS? Throw some comments in the chat, by the way, folks, and I'll start throwing some stuff up there. But I'll let you go first, Anthony. Who's your X factor?
I'll stay consistent. I think it was a show that Matt and I did maybe, and a similar question was asked. I went with Tommy Tanks, and I'm going with Tommy again.
Okay. You've got a couple. Laura's got Edmund as well. Aaron Edick. Tommy X-Man is there as well. Oh, gosh. Rebecca. Bless your heart.
That's a troll. Rebecca's trolling you.
Bless your heart, Rebecca. Austin Barnes. Noisy Ninja said Edmund or Rojas. Rojas is a good one. There's my OG, Martinez, Will Smith. So if Rebecca was trolling me, OG's just blowing smoke at me, but I'll take it. I appreciate the smoke. Bring it. Pinsanity says Teoscar. Craig says Teoscar. Matty Man says Betts is my guy. He has way more to prove than any other player on this team. I mean, yeah, I think that's fair. He does have a lot to prove, and the narrative around him is going to be loud.
I sent a tweet out the other day that I think there was a stat like, and the Braves are flying out to the warning track now. That's fun stuff to watch as the crowd goes wild behind Profar. There was a stat, something about like Mookie has had so many consecutive seasons with the 140 WRC plus weighted runs created, and like, you know, just sort of the history and the rarity behind that. And I said, like, this guy might actually be underappreciated as a Dodger.
Might be. I mean, yeah, it depends on what segment of the comments you end up listening to, but there is a segment where I would argue he's underappreciated for sure. We've got some Lux votes, which I appreciate it. Teoscar, a lot of Muncie, Teoscar, Edmund, Rebecca's laughing. LOL to her, Austin Barnes.
Yeah.
Kike's a good one. Kike's, I mean, he's Mr. Get big hits in big moments. Teoscar and Kike. Look, I think I'll stay consistent with who I've said as well. Aaron Edick says Spiegel's X factor is Clayton Kershaw. Look, I wish, man. I wish. He told me he was pitching. I'd do it just for you, Aaron Edick. But in the same spirit of naming Clayton Kershaw as my X factor, Anthony, give me Walker Buehler, baby. Walker Buehler throwing a gem in game 3. Walker Buehler rewinding the clock a little bit, finding a little of that wild card game 163 magic. And
if Walker
5 innings, 1 earned run.
If Walker Buehler has that X factor type of game, I think the Dodgers win this series. I really do.
Well, I hope you're right, because I think Buehler's going to come with it. Buehler's going to come with it. Like, you can't bet on any of this stuff, but like, if you gave me all of the Dodger pitchers and gave me appropriate odds for like which of these guys has the best start of any of the Dodgers pitchers, I can almost guarantee you that because Walker Buehler's odds would be so much higher than Flaherty and Yamamoto, that I would take my chances with Buehler.
Sure.
Just because, look, there's no logic here. Okay. I'm just saying, Buehler. I believe. We got a super chat here from Kevin. People counting us out. Hope they take it personally. You mentioned this.
Yes,
that there could be a little bit of an underdog mentality of, oh, everybody loves the Padres. They're going to have, the Andy McCullers of the world picking the Padres to win the World Series. That's some bulletin board material.
They're the sexy pick.
What's that?
They're the sexy pick.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, nobody will point out to the Dodgers that they are the favorite, according to Las Vegas, that everybody thinks they're the most likely to win the World Series, but you're going to be able to find enough material out there.
Vegas goes where the money goes, though, right? So but
they're also not in the business of losing money. So I think it moves a little bit, but I don't think they're going to overinflate other teams' odds just to hope people bet on the Dodgers.
If all the money came in on the Padres today, like all of it, you'd see significant adjustment.
Yeah. It's true. It's true. All right. Alex says, Shohei will blank in his first postseason at bat. What do you think? First postseason at bat. Let's say it's whoever would be on the mound for the Padres. I don't even know who would be on the mound
Yeah,
for
I
the
don't know
Padres.
who that would be. I think he takes the BB.
You thinking walk?
I think he walks. Yeah.
Double's my guess. Ohtani doubles.
Yes. Give it to me. Give it to me.
Off the just same place he always seems to double, which is right off of that screen, the bullpen screen out in right field. Give me that. Eric?
Go
ahead.
The Dodger Stadium would shake
if
he did that. I mean, it would shake. You would feel
and
it.
And then Mookie's going to hit a home run, and I mean, you would think that was shaking. It's
Yeah.
Eric says, do you think the Dodgers pen is the best in the NL? Seems like it is top to bottom, whereas the Padres may be more top heavy, especially with Suarez's struggles. The Padres bullpen's really good. My bold prediction was about the Dodgers bullpen at the beginning of the year. I've been like, just wait. They're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. They're going to be fine. I think you're splitting hairs. I mean, I'll just say it's a tie. I think both these bullpens are very, very good. The Padres kept bringing dudes out that I'd never heard of before against us. And they're like, oh yeah, this guy's appeared 46 times and has a 2.2 ERA. And it's like, where did he come from? Like, why? I've never heard of
a bunch of those guys too,
though. No, it's true. It's true.
Like, who heard of Anthony Banda?
Yeah. And look, when you say top to bottom, keep in mind that because of some injuries, the bottom of the Dodgers bullpen is going to have a guy like Edgardo Enriquez, who hasn't really had a ton of runway. And I know there's hype, but he gave up a home run the last time that he was out. You know, they're going to have guys like Joe Kelly, who I don't think any of us love necessarily. Ryan Brazier's kind of been a little bit all over the place. Daniel Hudson. So I think both these bullpens are very, very good. I think you could probably make the same nitpicky stuff. The Padres closer, Suarez, is a mess. That's a huge problem. But they have 3 or 4 other guys that if they just made them the closer tomorrow, you'd probably feel really good about. So I'll say push personally.
Yeah. I think the Dodgers slightly are better. Just because I think anytime you have a little bit of question at the back end of the bullpen, and you have other bullpen that's equally as good who doesn't really have those questions, that side gets the nod.
Yeah. Fair. All right. TQT. Padres are obviously the best wild card team by far. Philly's going to coast to the NLCS since the Brewers and Mets are both trash. Hindsight being 2020 was the 2 seed the way to go. I feel like I already know your answer here, Anthony.
Yeah.
Anthony needed the 5-game divisional lead, folks. Like he's not worried about who they play. He's worried about making sure that prediction comes true.
Absolutely, 100%. No, I mean, my question would be this. I heard this on MLB radio today on satellite, and they were talking not about the Dodgers. They were talking about somebody else, but they said, so I think they were talking about that Mets Braves game or something. And they said the first time you see a team go out and deliberately try not to win a baseball game will be the first time it's ever happened. And I tend to agree with that because baseball is such an individual sport. Like you're not going to tell, I forget his name, Ronald Acuña's little brother, to go up there and intentionally strike out or not succeed. Or you're not going to give the ball to a pitcher and go, you know what? Go ahead and walk 6 dudes here.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to do that. And those guys aren't going to try to do that. So like my point being that they're all trying to succeed.
Yeah.
So like, how would they go about deliberately losing or tanking so that they could get that 2nd seed? I've always wondered how people think that happens. To answer the question though, no, you win the games that are in front of you and you let the chips fall where they might. And sometimes it's not exactly how you would like it to be, but you don't go out there and you purposely lose games. You just don't. And
look, the Diamondbacks were the team last year that everyone wanted to face. And then they made it all the way to the World Series and swept the Dodgers. And so who knows? That might be the Mets this year.
And that was going to be my next point, right? Like, I've said this before, like in such a short series like that, you can get beat.
Yeah.
It takes a couple of breaks here or there or one bad pitching performance by one guy. And, all of a sudden it flips. And so, no, but I think the bigger question is, should Major League Baseball look at how this seeding actually plays out? And I think that's a real question that should be answered.
I've always said I'm just pro in every sport that the reward for having the best record is you should get to choose who you play.
Yeah, and if that means that the wild card series goes 3 games and the other team doesn't know where they're flying if they win afterward, then that's on them, right? Then they should have been better. Like the
Yeah.
people who's telling Shohei he
You're
should have hit.
flying private anybody. Who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. I think they do need to reseed after that.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I would just be pro, like, and I mean, the seeding is a whole nother thing because the Padres, obviously, where they stood record wise. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. Look, you win there's 26-man rosters, 28 at the end of the year. Like, you've got to put 9 guys in the lineup plus a pitcher plus some bullpen arms. You just don't have enough like spots on the bench to just take all your best guys and tell them they've changed the position player rules. So, yeah, you just take your chances and play it as it goes.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Cole had a question. Should MLB go to strictly playoff seeding based on record and not take into account divisional standings? I like that.
It's what
Like the
basketball
Phillies.
does.
What's that?
It's what the NBA does.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't even know who's in the Lakers division. Like, I feel like nobody talks about divisions
It's
in
irrelevant.
NBA
Yeah.
the way that they talk about him in baseball. So I still
Because it
think
doesn't matter for playoff seeding.
Yeah, but
If
I mean,
it matters
I'm
for
just
playoff
saying.
seeding, we would pay more attention to division races in the NBA. But
I don't know. It used to. When I was growing up, if you won your division, you were guaranteed, and I still couldn't tell you because there's no rivalries in those divisions. Do you know who's in the Lakers division?
Golden State, Phoenix.
I was gonna say the Jazz, maybe.
Clippers.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, but the point is, in the NBA, when you go to the playoffs, it's strictly based on record, right?
The Clippers, Suns, Lakers, Kings, and Warriors. So there you go. You got a bunch of those teams correct. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, all I was gonna say is I think in baseball, if you don't win your division, you shouldn't be able to get a bye. I think seeding wise, we've got to rethink this thing. But
That's fair. That part of it is fair. I like that. Yeah. Yeah.
like the second best divisional win should be able to get a bye. Like, I mean, NFL's even worse, right? Because if you win your division, it's automatic home field advantage. And then that's where you get these 7 and 9 teams sneaking in and not only sneaking in, but hosting a game, which is crazy. And look, some people,
I think we can put this to bed if they just reseed after the wild card rounds.
Yeah, I'm with you. And again, what's the downside to the entertainment value of Dave Roberts or Andrew Friedman going up to the podium and saying, we would like to play the Padres in the next, or whatever. Like, we would like, everybody wins. It's great. Makes for great drama. You pissed off the other team.
I really like baseball's such a random postseason and like anybody could beat anybody. Like, seriously, like if you just threw the Marlins into the postseason,
No, they wouldn't win. Come on. No, you've gone too far. I'm with you on the randomness of baseball. The Marlins debunked that theory, Anthony. We got to keep them out of it.
Okay. Another bad team.
Once
every other year, they might knock somebody off. Is my point.
Look, the Diamondbacks were like a 500 baseball team and made the World Series last year.
But to your point about the TV, the made for TV pick your opponent thing.
Yeah.
Because of that randomness, I feel like teams would just end up going on TV in front of the camera and going, okay, heads, it's San Diego. Yeah, that would that's what they would end up doing.
Double-sided coin. We want the Mets. If it's heads, we want the Mets. Oh, it's heads. Come on. You really think that if the Dodgers had a choice between playing the Mets or the Padres, that for the fact of saving face, they would just flip a coin?
No. I think if you let them pick behind closed doors, look, here's the thing is like the second someone knows that you get to pick your opponent and you pick that opponent and you lose would be the death of that strategy.
It's fine. I'd pick the Mets every time. I'd take my chances.
Yeah, but you're talking about the Mets against maybe the second best team in baseball. There's like, that doesn't happen every year.
It's happening this year. That's why I would pick it.
Right.
That's why I would pick it.
And we don't get to pick our opponent this year. So when it does happen, and if it's against two teams who are about the same, the second you pick the team and that team beats you.
Yeah, but everyone's going to be pissed if you lose anyways. Add 5% more pissed. I'll take my chances. Jason wants to know, how much do we see Kike in the divisional series? Do you think he's just in versus lefties? I mean, it depends on if Freddie Freeman's healthy. I think is the huge caveat. But if Freddie Freeman is healthy, is Kike simply in against lefties? Only in against lefties? I guess Rojas is another injury that we've got to, assuming both those guys are available and healthy.
Yeah.
My answer would be yes. If Rojas is healthy, if Freeman is healthy, yes.
Yeah.
But Kike is pretty much the backup at first base, clearly. based on how they've been using him. So, but I think Kike is gonna, this is why you keep a guy like Kike around, because for whatever reason, when the lights go on in the postseason, he becomes like a 2x player of what he is in the regular season, and he kind of turned it on a little bit down the stretch. So, I would not be surprised if Kike has a big moment. Real quick on this note, I mean, we don't have to go into full playoff roster stuff because there are so many questions, but
Sure.
Chris Taylor versus Kevin Kiermaier. Is there any chance the Dodgers keep Kevin Kiermaier for that spot?
Assuming health, right?
Yeah, assuming everybody's healthy. They've already indicated. I don't know how Andy Pages isn't on this roster, was a quote from Dave Roberts. So in the event that Pages is on the roster, Freddie's healthy, Rojas is healthy, I think you basically do the math and it comes down to Chris Taylor versus Kevin Kiermaier.
And I think they end up going with Taylor because he gives them more versatility.
Yeah. And not to mention has had some big hits in his lifetime as well. So yeah. Rebecca wants to know, would you rather have Muncy at first or Kike at first? Kike seemed to do fine.
Yeah, I think he was fine. I think then the question is, then you put Chris Taylor at third?
Yeah,
right?
or Kike. Probably Kike.
Or Kike, right? Yeah.
It's like it's probably Kike in the lineup either way.
Okay, so
I guess you could, or I mean, I suppose it might still be Kike, but you could move Rojas to third and put Edman at short, and then put Kiermaier or Taylor or Kike or whoever you want in center. Pages, please no Pages in center field.
Yeah,
but those are kind of, Edman and Rojas give you some flexibility.
Yeah.
So there you go. Blake saying Dave has said that Muncy would play first if Freddie can't go, and Kike would play third. So there you go.
Yeah.
Blake answering our question.
I think that feels like the logical answer there. Like Kike's going to give you a little more range there. He can move a little better. Yeah.
So there you go. Shout out Blake Williams, our guy, coming up clutch with that. Let's see. I was trying to see if we had any other questions, but I think we went through most of them. If you've got another question, throw it in the chat. If you have a food question, throw it in the chat. Here's one more, not related to the playoffs. Christopher said, should the Dodgers spend more money to get pitchers with less risky injury history? They seem to look for undervalued pitchers due to injury risk. Do they pony up more for more reliability? I absolutely think that they have tried to find an inefficiency in guys with injury histories and saying, well, if we sign 4 of them and only need 2 of them, we'll see what happens. Well, we saw what happened this year.
Yeah.
They went 0 for 4 pretty much, in using that equation. So what do you think? Like, do you think there's going to be a philosophy change here?
Look, I think they're always going to look for the value. They always are. Every team does that. And I think that the Dodgers are more attractive. They're a more attractive destination to those guys. The Dodgers have turned around more pitchers, so that's attractive also.
Yeah.
And the Dodgers can offer more money, even though we're talking about value. And so they tend to land those guys. Every team goes after them. I don't think the Dodgers are unique in that. So to say that they only do that, I think would be wrong. Or they're the only team who does that would be wrong.
Yeah.
But I think then you have to ask yourself, who are the non-injury prone pitchers who are on the market in any given winter?
Yeah.
And that also plays into it, because like if you're in a market where like there's nobody that's really could be considered a number 2 guy, even like we're not even talking about a number 1, then like what are you doing there? Because in those situations, those kinds of guys are automatically become the most coveted, and then teams get into bidding wars over that guy who's probably a mid-rotation type of arm. And the Dodgers are trying to not swim in those waters. And they would rather, I think, take the risk and the value of a guy who has the potential like a Tyler Glasnow.
Yeah, it's fair. And by the way, Yamamoto did not come with injury concerns. Obviously, the pitching every 6th day thing was a deal.
Yeah, he'd been a horse in Japan.
Yeah, exactly. A couple interesting ones here. Noisy Ninja, not about the Dodgers. Do you have any thoughts on Montgomery and the Diamondbacks owner's comments? If you didn't hear this, Montgomery was the big signing from the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks owner basically came out today and said this was a massive mistake, that it's a waste of money, that this guy sucks. Presumably in an attempt to convince Jordan Montgomery not to pick up his whatever it is, $25 million player option that he has for this upcoming season.
Yeah.
I sort of respect the hustle of the owner. That's like, hey, how uncomfortable can we make this? Because 26 million bucks is going to be super uncomfortable. So I'll just make some awkward comments, see what happens. He's definitely picking up that option because he was terrible. And you're just going to have to wear this one. But I find this funny and in a weird, sick way, kind of respect it, Anthony.
Yeah, it's funny, and I respect it because I'm a Dodgers fan. But we sometimes will have fans clamoring. Every team, not just Dodger fans, but every team will have people clamoring after somebody performs badly, like call this guy out publicly, like shame him, basically, right? Put the scarlet letter on him, like all of that stuff. Make him walk naked while we ring a bell behind him. And like the reason why a lot of teams won't do that is because it's bad business.
Yeah.
It is. It really is bad business. If you think that other players aren't taking note of this and they become free agents, or it's extension time or something like that, players remember stuff like this.
Oh, yeah.
And then it becomes the Diamondbacks aren't loyal to their guys. And
yeah, but at the same time, if the Diamondbacks are offering you $10 million more over 2 years than the next team, like, you're going to remember it, and then you're going to sign the contract and say, yeah, hey, I get it. But also,
but not for 10 million, not for 10. It's going to be higher than that. Like
you think a guy would take $5 million a year? Like, if it was a 2-year deal that was $10 million higher.
But then you're talking about a guy who's fighting for his life kind of in Major League Baseball. I'm talking about a big guy.
So if it's 5 years, 200 million somewhere else, and it's 5 years, 225 million in Arizona, you think guys are going to take 200, just not, they'll give up 25 million just not to go to
here's
Arizona.
The thing, but that hypothetical doesn't make a ton of sense because your second best offer typically for a star like that isn't going to be $25 million less than the top offer.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think we
got the same
overhyped
offer from other teams. Carlos Correa was getting the same offer from other teams. Bryce Harper got similar offers from other teams. When those things become that equal,
sure,
things like this matter.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be a tiebreaker. I just think sometimes we overhype this, and then the guys get offered. I mean, look at the NFL. It's like, why would anybody go there? Well, because they paid them a lot more money to go there. Anybody will sign with the Las Vegas Raiders because the Raiders are paying them more money. They're not expecting to win. They're just trying to set themselves up financially.
And then what this means then is for the Diamondbacks to start signing those guys is they're going to have to overpay over the next highest bid, which then puts them in a different situation, right? And so then the other team goes, all right, fine, you can have that guy for that price. The Giants, that Carlos Correa situation, I don't care who's negotiating those contracts. Buster Posey has been in the room with Bryce Harper, Aaron Judge, and Shohei Ohtani, and none of them have gone there. So I don't care who's running that front office there. A thing like Carlos Correa, more so than this Jordan Montgomery thing, lingers.
Which, by the way, real quick on that, I think the Buster Posey, Matt Olson, or Chapman story is way weirder than the Diamondbacks one. The idea that they had a general manager in place and Buster Posey went around the general manager and negotiated a contract with Chapman and got the owner to sign off on it and gave him things that the GM, who was still employed, would not give him is insane to me. Like, that is way more dysfunctional than the D-backs owner. My 2 cents.
They're a mess. They're a mess.
Yeah. I mean, look, Buster Posey seems like a good dude. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying Zaidi deserved any credit for anything. I'm just saying that one, I'm like, that's like that sounds like Kurt Rambis and Jeannie Buss situation is going on in San Francisco with some different names.
100. That's a great comparison. Also for Matt Chapman.
Yeah, I know.
Who, hey, had a good year. Great.
Yeah, exactly. Jonathan, Andrew Friedman ponies up more money for less reliability. Pepio versus Glasnow. Andrew Friedman always gives the bag to injured pitchers, starting with Brandon McCarthy. Again, I like
McCarthy got the bag, but
it's like didn't he get like a 5 year, $60 million or something like that?
I mean, in baseball terms, is that the bag?
Fair. Yeah, fair. I mean, it felt like a decent amount of money at the time. I think this is. I don't think it's debatable, honestly. That maybe the more money thing, but I think basically the Dodgers have made pretty clear that they are aiming for ceilings and not for floors, and they'll take a high ceiling with a high risk.
It's easy to say this stuff in hindsight.
Yeah.
At the time, tell me who you should go after. Because at one point, the answer to that question was Max. Why am I blanking on the name? Max Scherzer.
Yeah.
That has not worked out well.
Yeah. Yeah.
At another time, that might have been, even though he had an injury in the past, he had not been injured since then, Jacob deGrom.
Yeah. Well, and even the glass now for Pepio, I think is the perfect one because like all the Pepio people were really, really quiet for most of this season. Like and then it flipped. And I'm not saying one side is wrong. I'm just saying like there's risk involved in all of these things. The Dodgers again have taken on more risk, and it's something that they've talked about reevaluating, and we'll see how that plays out. But we appreciate the super chat, Jonathan. I think it's an interesting conversation. And there will be more of it.
It is a good question, and it's a fair question, but ask it this winter. And when you know what all the options are on the table, and that's the thing, we don't know everything that they're working on. So it's hard, we can't make that determination. And like you said, if Glasnow stays healthy and he's the ace going into the NLDS, no one's talking about that trade being bad. And also he's got plenty more years. It's going to probably work out better than,
maybe. Yeah. And that's the thing. And yet he did get hurt. And yet he came with an injury history, and now he has an elbow injury right when they need it. So it's like, I think everybody to some extent could feel good about their opinion.
Yeah.
A couple more questions here.
If that's the case, Shohei had 2 Tommy John surgeries. Should we not have signed him?
Yeah. Laura with the question: do we have any information on Fernando Valenzuela's illness? I just put this up because I've got a bone to pick real quick. I got sent a tweet from a guy that was basically reporting that Fernando Valenzuela said, and in the tweet that he posted, he said Fernando Valenzuela's family has tried to keep this information secret or keep this out of the public, and then this person went and put it public. Like, I can't stand people like this to have the courage to say in your message, hey, his family doesn't want this out there, but here it is. At the same time, like, play dumb. Pretend like you didn't realize the family didn't want it out there. Like, I just think this stuff is so sickening to me. Like, the reason it's not out there is because he did not want it out there. The Dodgers have, by all accounts, honored those wishes. A lot of the media has all honored those wishes. And then it just the lowest of the low people who just take any chance. Like, I can't stand it, and I'm going to stop talking now, but like, if you have to put in a tweet, his family didn't want this out, and it's it's private health information, then don't put it out. Then don't put it out.
How is it news?
Yeah.
How is it news? How does it affect the team? How does it affect the fans? It's not news, and now you're it's clickbait.
Yeah. I again, like, to me, as I'm reading it, because it was a tweet that I had to translate because I don't understand. And I'm reading it and I'm like, like, I'm pulling up the tweet right now. It irritated me so bad because of the way that the person worded it. I'm not going to say who it is, but it says, not much is known. He and his family have wanted to keep the disease a secret. We pray for a speedy recovery. He and his family have wanted to keep this a secret. And yet here's my tweet with now, 175,000 views. Like, gosh, it's so sickening to me. It's so sickening to me. And this is somebody who has 4.2 million followers, which is beyond nuts to me. So, all right. Last question. Our guy Blake, who said he was relaxing, couldn't jump on the show with us. I hope, it's feet up on the couch, maybe, cheering on the Padres. Who knows what Blake was doing tonight? He said, Yamamoto's posting a sub-3 ERA in the postseason. Are you getting on the train before it leaves the station, Anthony?
I'm on the Yamamoto train, baby.
Yeah,
I'm
on. I think we all are. I don't think this is an unpopular train. I think it's the most popular train of any Dodgers pitcher.
I walked on that joint with the bento box and a bottle of sake. Let's rock.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know of anybody who is saying he isn't their best pitcher in the postseason. Maybe Blake's point is he the best pitcher, but like, is he going to be a sub-3 ERA guy in the postseason? Sub-3 is basically, obviously, 6 innings and 2 earned. So if you're going less than 6, which he is, it's got to be 1 run or fewer. But, I'm seeing in the chat, I'm in, Yama Choo Choo. I'm not sure. Elite postseason is what Blake is saying. He's a dog. We're all with you.
I like Yamamoto, man. I'm with Blake on this 100%. I think that injury aside, which, you can't help that, but like, he's shown some. Blake called it. He's a dog.
Yeah.
Like, he has shown that. I think as he gets older, matures, gets used to this country, this continent, and the schedule in Major League Baseball, I think we're going to see more of that. He feels like a guy that snarls.
Yeah, I'm with you. Look, I think I think he's the best pitcher that the Dodgers have right now. I actually don't know if that's controversial or even debatable. I mean, you could make the case for Flaherty. You could make the case, but I think it would be a really hard case to make. So I'm with you, Blake.
I could only go to Sunday's game, so it didn't really matter who was pitching. But the fact that I think he's going to get the ball in that game, I'm stoked.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, folks, we appreciate you. 2,700 people plus on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, joining us on a Tuesday night. There's wild card games going on. There's no Dodger content, and yet you're here. We greatly appreciate all of you. That's why we keep coming back for more. Stay tuned to this channel. We're going to have some workout videos, some interviews, that kind of stuff as the week continues. We've got people who are credentialed for the NLDS as well as the NLCS in the World Series if it gets that far. So it's going to be good stuff from the folks over here at DodgerBlue.com. If you're new here, subscribe, ring the notification bell. Again, live content all throughout the week here on the Dodger Blue 1958 page. If you're a podcast person, Apple, Spotify, Google, check out the DodgerHeads podcast, Dodger Blue 1958 on social media, and of course, DodgerBlue.com. That is Anthony Witrado. I am Jeff Spiegel. Folks, enjoy the rest of your day. And as always, go Dodgers.